To honor a love that had already come to an end, Ethan Hayes stepped onto the stage at his graduation gala. He performed a song called Northbound. The moment he began singing, the entire school was left stunned. His ex-girlfriend, Chloe Bennett, fell into deep thought. Ethan had never been more than an ordinary college student. He and Chloe had dated for 4 years, and everyone believed they would eventually get married, but fate had other plans. No one expected Chloe to stand on the graduation stage and publicly accuse Ethan of being nothing more than a freeloader. Furious, Ethan and his best friend, Mason Reed, went up to confront her. The argument escalated so badly that both of them were detained for 5 days. By the time Ethan was released, rumors about him had spread everywhere. Overnight, he became someone everyone hated, and no company was willing to hire him. His life gradually fell apart. Meanwhile, Chloe used all the attention to her advantage, became a top celebrity, and climbed to the peak of fame. But when Ethan opened his eyes again, he realized something unbelievable. He had been reborn on the very day of the graduation gala. He and Mason were once again sitting in the front row, watching the show. Mason nudged him and said, "Ethan, why were you sleeping? Chloe's performance is about to begin." Ethan rubbed his eyes in confusion. Wasn't he just getting a massage on the 3rd floor of a nightclub in Las Vegas? How had he suddenly returned to college? Had he died from overexcitement and somehow been given another chance? At that moment, Chloe walked onto the stage wearing a stunning dress. She looked so beautiful that the entire audience couldn't take their eyes off her. Ethan pinched his cheek. The sharp pain confirmed it. This wasn't a dream. He had truly been reborn. Seeing Ethan's shocked expression, Mason laughed and teased him. "I heard Chloe has already signed a contract with Skyline Entertainment. She's going to become a huge star. You'd better work harder, or she'll leave you behind." Ethan smiled faintly. In his previous life, he had worked 3 jobs a day just to support Chloe's dream of becoming famous. In the end, she completely destroyed his life. But this time, things would be different. He quietly said to Mason, "Brother, whatever happens later, don't lose your temper." Mason looked confused. "It's just a graduation show. Why would I get angry?" The music grew louder as Chloe confidently began dancing. Her soft, sweet voice filled the auditorium, instantly winning over the audience. Many people stared at her with admiration. Mason couldn't stop praising her. "This song is amazing. Ethan, meeting Chloe is probably the luckiest thing that's ever happened to you." Ethan let out a bitter laugh. "No. Falling in love with Chloe was the biggest mistake of my life." Mason was stunned. Ethan had been acting strangely all day, but he couldn't figure out why. By then, Chloe had finished her performance and turned to face the audience. Chloe bowed deeply to the audience after finishing her performance, but she didn't stand up right away. Whispers immediately spread through the crowd. "What's wrong with her? Is she crying?" While everyone was still trying to figure it out, Chloe slowly raised her head. Tears were already streaming down her face. She spoke with a trembling voice. "Everyone, today isn't just the day I'm saying goodbye to my school. It's also the day I'm saying goodbye to my past relationship. For 4 long years, I supported him with all my heart. But I'm exhausted, tired of his mistreatment and his endless demands. I bought everything he needed. I paid for his food, clothes, and daily expenses. I loved him with all my heart. But even then, I couldn't stop him from betraying me." She looked toward Ethan. "Ethan Hayes. I'm tired. Let's end this relationship." Ethan watched her performance in complete silence. He couldn't help thinking that Chloe was truly born to be an actress. It was almost a waste that she hadn't gone into acting sooner. In his previous life, he had learned to drink for her, to lose himself for her, and in the end, because of her, he had learned the harsh truth about reality. But this time, things were different. Chloe wasn't famous yet. His reputation hadn't been destroyed yet. There was no way he would let her ruin his life again. Mason was completely stunned. He stared at Ethan, then looked back at Chloe on stage. His face instantly turned red with anger. He was just about to curse out loud when he blurted, Ethan, did Chloe seriously twist the whole story? You're the one who sacrificed everything for her. You paid her college tuition for all 4 years. You worked 3 jobs every single day just to earn enough money. She was out there enjoying good food and living comfortably while you survived on cold bread and canned soup in your dorm. And now she has the nerve to slander you like this? We have to go up there and expose her. Mason was a student from the athletics department and Ethan's closest friend. He couldn't just sit there and watch Ethan be humiliated. But Ethan stretched out his arm and stopped him. Why are you in such a hurry? I'm performing next. Just sit back and watch the show. I won't let her get away with this. Hearing Ethan's calm voice, Mason finally sat down. He had no idea what Ethan was planning. But he trusted him completely. Even so, every time he looked at Chloe standing on stage with fake tears running down her face, he had to fight to control his anger. That shameless woman. How could she do this to you? Ethan rubbed his wrist and let out a helpless laugh. You know what people say? A simp keeps giving until there's nothing left. That was exactly who I used to be. Mason froze. In the past, whenever he jokingly called Ethan a simp, Ethan would get furious. But today, Ethan admitted it himself. Meanwhile, Chloe had been secretly watching Ethan the entire time from the stage. When she realized he wasn't coming up to argue with her like he had before, a disappointed look flashed across her face down below. The audience had already exploded with anger. Some hot-blooded students began shouting. Who is this Ethan Hayes? Being a freeloader wasn't bad enough, he even cheated on her. If I ever meet him, I'll make sure he never forgets it. Hearing those words, Ethan's heart seemed to stop for a moment. The younger students were even more ruthless than he remembered. Just then, a firm hand grabbed him by the shoulder. Ethan turned around and saw Professor Harris, the academic advisor, glaring at him with a serious expression. Ethan, what on earth is going on here? The moment Ethan saw Professor Harris, guilt washed over him. In his previous life, even Professor Harris had been punished by the university because of Ethan's incident. Lowering his voice, Ethan asked, Professor, do you really believe what she said? Professor Harris replied in a deep, steady voice. I know what kind of person you are. I've known both of you for a long time, but I never imagined things would end like this. Ethan let out a helpless sigh. After a long silence, he forced a bitter smile. She just found someone richer to rely on. That's all there is to it. Professor Harris glanced at the furious students gathering behind them. After hesitating for a moment, he tried to persuade Ethan. She's trying to destroy your reputation. Cancel your performance today. If you go on that stage now, it could be very dangerous. Ethan shook his head without hesitation. No. I have to go on stage today. If I don't, everyone will believe her lies. Professor Harris was nearly at his breaking point. Even if you explain yourself up there, who will believe you? And if this crowd loses control, it could turn into complete chaos. The audience was still shouting insults without stopping. As Chloe stepped down from the stage, the host quickly walked to the microphone. He looked at the cue card in his hand and announced, Our next performer is Ethan Hayes from the composition department. The moment the audience heard the name Ethan Hayes, the entire hall fell silent. Just seconds ago, everyone had been cursing someone named Ethan Hayes. Now another Ethan Hayes was about to walk onto the stage. Was it simply someone with the same name? Or could it really be the so-called freeloader everyone was talking about? As soon as the audience heard the name Ethan Hayes, many people froze. Just moments ago, they had been cursing Ethan. And now another Ethan was about to step onto the stage. Could it simply be someone with the same name? Or was this really the so-called freeloader everyone had been talking about? Professor Harris's face darkened with even more anger as he glanced toward the direction Chloe had gone. For a long moment, he remained silent. Mason patted his chest confidently and smiled. Go ahead, Ethan. If anyone dares to come near you, I'll knock them out with one punch. Ethan simply smiled calmly and told Mason not to get so emotional. Then he turned around and walked straight toward the stage. When he reached the center of the stage, Ethan looked down at the students. They stared at him as if they wanted to tear him apart. With a calm expression, he spoke into the microphone. "Hello, everyone. I'm Ethan Hayes, the same Ethan Hayes Chloe Bennett just called a freeloader." The moment Professor Harris heard those words, he slapped his forehead. This kid is way too honest. Now he's really finished. As soon as Ethan finished speaking, the entire auditorium exploded with rage. Insults echoed from every direction. "Ethan, you bastard. How dare you show your face here? Get out of our sight. Get off the stage." Even while facing the crowd's humiliation, Ethan acted as though he hadn't heard a single word. He quietly looked toward the direction where Chloe had left. Then, a faint, self-mocking smile appeared on his face. Many of the students who had been enjoying the drama suddenly paused. Something about Ethan's expression didn't match the image of a guilty man. It felt as if there was much more to the story. Ethan waved to one of the staff members below the stage. A guitar was quickly brought to him. He took it, adjusted the strings for a moment, then leaned toward the microphone. In a soft voice, he said, "This is a song I wrote for Chloe. I originally wanted to give it to her as a gift. But, never mind." Ethan let out another helpless smile. This time, the audience was even more surprised. He didn't seem like the heartless villain everyone had imagined. Ethan gently smiled. His fingers lightly brushed across the guitar strings. A soft, beautiful melody flowed through the auditorium like a quiet river. Instantly, the entire hall fell silent. Every voice disappeared. Every pair of eyes was fixed on Ethan. As the instrumental intro grew stronger, Ethan slowly began to sing. With only a few simple lines, the audience was completely captivated. His deep, emotional voice carried through the entire hall like magic. His voice was deep and almost magical, carrying the emotions of a man with a shattered heart, reminiscing about the love he had lost. On the surface, he looked calm. But deep inside, he had already fallen apart. Professor Harris stared at Ethan in disbelief. During all 4 years of college, Ethan had always seemed like an ordinary student. He had never imagined that Ethan could write and perform a song this beautiful. Ethan's eyes had turned slightly red, and his face was filled with the quiet pain of someone who had been abandoned by the person he loved the most. Looking at the audience, he continued to sing. As the chorus began, every teacher and student in the auditorium was left speechless. Everyone wondered the same thing. How unforgettable must a love have been, for someone to write a song this heartbreaking? More and more people in the audience began doubting the rumors they had heard. How could someone so talented and so devoted really be a freeloader? Backstage, Chloe stared at the stage in complete disbelief. Is that really Ethan? The Ethan she knew had always been the one running errands for her, delivering food, and working endless part-time jobs. How could he possibly write and perform a song like this? Standing beside her, her manager, Victor Stone, frowned. This boy was far from ordinary. After being publicly humiliated, Ethan hadn't argued or defended himself. Instead, he had completely turned the situation around. Without attacking anyone, he had made himself look like the true victim. Now things were becoming much more complicated. The music reached its climax. Ethan's voice grew even more powerful as he continued singing. The song was so emotional that the students became completely absorbed in it. Some of the more sensitive listeners already had tears welling up in their eyes. Ethan's lonely, sorrowful voice, combined with his heartfelt performance, stirred everyone's emotions. Many people who had been insulting him just moments ago now felt sympathy instead. As the final note faded away, the entire auditorium fell into complete silence. Not a single person spoke. Ethan gave a faint, bittersweet smile. A single tear slowly rolled down his cheek. Then he bowed deeply to the audience. The crowd stood frozen, as if they had suddenly realized something important. Mason was crying so hard that tears covered his entire face. He knew everything Ethan had sacrificed for Chloe. That was why the song hit him harder than anyone else. Wiping away his tears, Mason jumped to his feet and shouted, "Bravo!" The very next second, the entire auditorium erupted into thunderous applause. The cheers were so loud it felt as though the roof might collapse. Professor Harris smiled with relief and nodded quietly. Ethan's performance had completely changed the atmosphere of the entire graduation ceremony. Standing on the stage, Ethan lifted the corners of his lips into a faint smile and leaned toward the microphone once again. Although his voice trembled slightly, he said quietly, "Someone once asked me, how long does a lifetime last? Back then, I didn't know the answer. But today, I finally understand. A lifetime lasts exactly 938 days. The entire auditorium fell silent. Not only the students, but even the teachers couldn't understand what he meant. Ethan looked toward the exit where Chloe had disappeared. With a lonely, sorrowful smile, he continued. She once told me that she would love me for the rest of her life. Suddenly, everyone understood. The lifetime Chloe had promised had lasted only 938 days. That was the length of forever in her eyes. A girl in the audience suddenly shouted, "Don't cry, senior. We're still here with you." Her words broke the silence. Soon, more students began calling out to encourage Ethan. Backstage, Victor's expression grew darker with every passing second. He knew their plan had already failed. Worse still, it could easily backfire. Ethan gently waved at the audience. Then he looked once more toward the path Chloe had taken. Hope still lingered in his eyes. But little by little, that light faded away. A lonely smile spread across his face. He spoke softly. "Maybe I really did give her my whole heart. Perhaps I deserved to lose. Miss Bennett, I sincerely wish you happiness." Ethan's eyes were red as he looked across the audience. The painful smile on his face pierced everyone's heart. He gave one final respectful bow, turned around, and quietly walked off the stage. At that moment, the audience could no longer hold back. The entire hall erupted. People who had been supporting Chloe only moments earlier now began shouting at her instead. "She's a liar. She deceived all of us." The auditorium instantly descended into chaos. Inside the dressing room, Chloe was on the verge of tears. She grabbed Victor's arm anxiously. "Victor, what do we do now? Everyone outside is cursing me." Victor's expression turned cold. He let out a quiet laugh. "Why are you panicking? That kid surprised me today, but don't worry. This isn't over yet." Victor's expression turned cold as he let out a faint laugh. "Why are you panicking? That kid did surprise me today, but it doesn't matter. The story that you were dumped by a worthless freeloader will be on every news website tonight. By the time that happens, no matter how much he tries to explain himself, nobody will believe him." As soon as Ethan stepped off the stage, Mason rushed over and blocked his eyes were red from crying. "Ethan, I know you're hurting right now. Come on. Let's go out and have a few drinks. Tonight, we're not stopping until we're completely drunk." Ethan curled his lips into a faint smile. "Hurting? Why would I be the one who's hurting? If anyone should regret today, it's them. But you're right. We should celebrate." His voice was calm and relaxed, without the slightest trace of sadness. Seeing Ethan act so differently left Mason completely stunned. The two friends headed to Brooklyn Hot Pot, one of their favorite restaurants. The rich aroma of the spicy red broth instantly made Ethan's mouth water. For the first time in a long while, he felt completely at ease after a few bottles of beer. All the tension in his body disappeared. Meanwhile, Mason kept staring at his phone with a worried expression. He suddenly looked up. "Ethan, Chloe just made a post on Instagram. She's calling you a freeloader again. A lot of news outlets have already reposted it. Right now, thousands of people online are insulting you." Ethan calmly took the phone and glanced at the screen. He frowned slightly. This was happening even earlier than it had in his previous life, but this time he was already prepared. Ethan glanced at the post on the screen. One thing immediately caught his attention. "Why is this happening even earlier than it did in my previous life?" But instead of panicking, Ethan had already come up with a plan. He turned to Mason and said, "I need your help recording a short video. In it, I'll act like an innocent man who's been falsely accused." After hearing the plan, Mason excitedly nodded. He adjusted the angle of his phone so the footage would look like it had been secretly recorded. Ethan took a deep breath, gathered his emotions, and signaled that he was ready. The recording began. Mason started by asking, "Ethan, do you know what people are saying about you online right now?" Ethan replied calmly, "People can say whatever they want. I can't control what comes out of their mouths." His voice was soft and steady. The faint sadness on his handsome face made him look genuinely heartbroken. Anyone watching the video would instinctively sympathize with him. Mason stayed in character and angrily asked, "So you're just going to let her destroy your reputation? She treated you so horribly, and you're still trying to protect her? Have you lost your mind?" Ethan gently shook his head. "Don't talk about her like that. She's not a bad person. I'm sure she has her own reasons." Mason raised his voice even more. "Ethan, when are you going to wake up? She's trying to ruin your life. Do you know how hard your parents worked just to send you to college? If you let her frame you like this, you won't even be able to find a job. Are you really going to return to your hometown in shame?" The moment Mason mentioned Ethan's parents and his hometown, tears instantly welled up in Ethan's eyes. The last wall protecting his emotions completely collapsed. Unable to hold himself together any longer, he broke down and cried uncontrollably. Memories from his previous life flooded back. After losing everything, he had been too ashamed to return home. He couldn't even face his parents. Instead, he wandered alone like a lost soul. He had never stopped to think about how much pain his parents must have endured because of him. Looking back now, he realized what a terrible son he had been. Mason tapped the screen and stopped the recording. Then he flashed Ethan a big thumbs up and laughed. "Bro, your acting is unbelievable. Even I almost started crying." Ethan wiped away his tears and forced a smile. "It wasn't acting. Those onions were seriously strong. I need to wash my eyes." Mason replayed the video they had just recorded. The result was so convincing that even he almost believed Ethan was an innocent victim who still loved the woman who had betrayed him. Ethan excused himself to wash his eyes. Meanwhile, Mason replayed the video they had just recorded. After adding a short caption, he tagged Chloe's Instagram account first, then he tagged Ethan's account as well. He selected a trending topic and uploaded the video. Looking at his profile, Mason sighed. He had only a few hundred followers. He doubted the video would attract much attention. Gritting his teeth, he made a bold decision. He spent $1,000 to promote the post. For two broke college students, that wasn't a small amount. It was enough to cover an entire month's worth of meals. A few moments later, Ethan returned after washing his face. The instant Mason saw him, he excitedly waved his phone. "Ethan, look. I think the video's about to go viral." Ethan unlocked his phone. In just 5 minutes, the video had already crossed 10,000 views. Even more unbelievable, the view count was climbing at an incredible speed. Ethan and Mason looked at each other, then smiled. Without saying another word, they raised their glasses and finished their drinks. That night, around 10 p.m., Ethan returned to his small, rundown rented apartment. He emptied his pockets and counted every dollar he had left. The total came to just $3,000. It was a terrible way to start his second life. Ethan let out a long sigh. "The first thing I need is money. Delivering food, working construction. Those jobs were no longer an option. If he wanted to change his future, he needed to find a much faster way to make money." He lay down on his bed and absent-mindedly touched his toned abs. A helpless smile appeared on his face. These abs were built from years of exhausting part-time jobs. Looks like they finally have some use. As memories from his previous life flooded back, countless business opportunities flashed through his mind. He knew exactly which industries would explode in the next few years, and where the real fortunes would be made. This time, he wasn't going to miss those opportunities. Ethan took a deep breath. Everything had reset because he had been given a second chance at life. This time, he was determined to live differently. He would never allow himself to fall into the same miserable fate again. Early the next morning, birds chirped outside his window as warm sunlight streamed into his small apartment. Ethan got up, took a shower, and prepared to head out in search of work. But before he could leave, Mason burst through the door, gasping for breath. "Ethan, this is bad. Chloe just held a press conference." The moment Ethan heard those words, his expression changed. "A press conference? Why is everything happening differently from my previous life?" He immediately grabbed his phone. On the screen, Chloe was crying in front of countless reporters. She looked completely devastated. According to her story, Ethan wasn't just a worthless man who cheated on her, she also accused him of being abusive, claiming he had a habit of domestic violence and frequently hit her. Standing beside her, Victor wore a furious expression. He publicly declared, "A man like Ethan Hayes deserves to be completely blacklisted. Trash like him shouldn't have a place to hide anywhere in this industry." Chloe was already a popular influencer with millions of fans. Now that she also had the full backing of Skyline Entertainment, the story exploded across social media. Within minutes it climbed to the top of the trending charts. For a while, the entire internet turned against Ethan. Even the video Mason had uploaded the previous night was now flooded with hateful comments. Mason clenched his fists in frustration. "Ethan, Chloe has completely crossed the line. This lie has spread everywhere." But instead of panicking, Ethan's eyes suddenly lit up. A confident smile appeared on his face. He grabbed Mason by the shoulders and laughed. "You're a genius. Why didn't I think of using that song yesterday? Brother, I need you to help me record one more video." Ethan handed his phone to Mason, then he picked up the guitar resting on the table and carefully tuned the strings. After taking a seat, he slowly immersed himself in the role. Mason had already positioned the camera. The moment he saw Ethan preparing the guitar again, he immediately understood. He's going to sing another song. And he couldn't hide his excitement. Ethan nodded, his fingers gently brushed across the strings. A beautiful melody instantly filled the room. The atmosphere became so heartbreaking that it was almost impossible to breathe. After calming his emotions, Ethan began to sing. The lyrics fit the situation perfectly. Every single line reflected the pain Ethan was going through. His voice trembled slightly. Like a man who had been abandoned by the person he loved most, quietly pouring out all the sorrow he had kept buried inside. The performance was incredibly moving. Tears slowly filled Ethan's eyes. He tilted his head upward, trying to stop them from falling. As the song reached its emotional climax, Ethan raised his voice with every ounce of feeling he had left. When the chorus arrived, even Mason felt a lump form in his throat. For a brief moment, he couldn't tell whether Ethan was acting, or whether he was finally using this performance to release the pain he had carried in his heart all along. But then Mason heard a single line in the song. A line where Ethan took all the blame upon himself. At that very moment, Mason finally understood the true purpose of the video. That line was the real killer move. The music slowly faded away, the storm of emotions inside Ethan gradually settled. When the song ended, Ethan's eyes were bloodshot this time. He couldn't hold them back anymore. Tears finally rolled down his face. There were no heartbreaking screams or dramatic outbursts in the song. Instead, it quietly told the story of a man who sacrificed everything for the woman he loved, who endured endless hardships without complaint, while the woman he loved carelessly threw away his devotion, never once realizing how precious it truly was. As the final note disappeared, Ethan remained seated in silence. He stared out the window at the bustling city streets below. Outside, life continued as usual. Inside the room, everything felt dark and painfully quiet. Ethan shook his head with a bitter smile. "How did I manage to make myself this emotional?" he thought. After editing the video, Ethan uploaded it to his Instagram account. Mason immediately reposted it to help spread it even further. Thanks to the previous day's viral video, Mason's account had already gained well over 100,000 followers. In today's world, followers meant money. An account with more than 1 million followers could easily earn thousands of dollars from a single advertisement or promotional post. After lunch, Mason returned to his part-time job. He was a complete fitness fanatic. Even after graduation, he had decided to continue working in the fitness industry. Meanwhile, Ethan sat quietly by himself. He opened his phone and began planning his next move. This time, he wasn't just going to clear his name. He was going to build a future so successful that everyone who had looked down on him would one day regret it. Ethan spent the afternoon registering the copyrights for both of his songs. Just as he finished, his phone started vibrating non-stop. It was ringing so often that it almost seemed like it had caught a virus. Then he discovered the reason. His song Too Far had become a massive hit. Its popularity had grown far beyond anything he had imagined. Young people were living under enormous pressure, and the song spoke directly to their hearts. After all, who had never shed tears after a painful breakup? Society often worked this way. Most people struggled and worked tirelessly so that a fortunate few could enjoy life without a care. By that evening, the video had already received more than 100,000 likes. As the drama surrounding Ethan and Chloe continued to spread, Too Far climbed onto the trending charts. Ethan lay comfortably on his sofa, scrolling through his phone. Thinking about how famous he was about to become, he couldn't help laughing at his own brilliant acting performance. But just as he believed everything was finally going his way, an unseen force stepped in. The discussions about Too Far suddenly began to die down within a short time. The song completely disappeared from the trending charts. Even influencers who had reposted Ethan's video started deleting their posts one after another. Ethan let out a long, helpless sigh. He already knew exactly what was happening, but at this point, he was still alone, still too weak. There was nothing he could do against them. At the headquarters of Skyline Entertainment, Victor angrily smashed the coffee cup in his hand onto the floor, grinding his teeth. He muttered that he's like a ghost that just won't go away. I can't believe we had to spend so much money just to deal with one ordinary guy. Chloe sat quietly beside him. She didn't even dare breathe too loudly. Victor's terrifying expression made the entire room feel suffocating. Chloe sat quietly beside Victor. She didn't even dare breathe too loudly. She had only recently joined the company and hadn't earned a single dollar yet, but she had already caused the company to lose millions. Looking at Victor's furious expression, she knew she had to make up for those losses somehow. A sly smile slowly appeared on her face. She leaned closer and whispered, "Victor, thank goodness you were here today. I have something very special I'd like to show you at my house. Would you like to come over tonight?" Victor paused for a moment. Then a knowing smile spread across his face as he immediately understood what she meant. His eyes wandered over Chloe's attractive figure. "If it's really that special, then of course I'll have to come and see it." He smirked confidently. "As for Ethan, Skyline Entertainment will blacklist him with everything we've got. Anyone who dares stand against Skyline is digging their own grave." The next morning, Ethan went out once again to look for a job. He visited one entertainment company after another. Large companies, small companies. It didn't matter. The moment they heard his name, they all shook their heads and turned him away. Ethan slowly realized that something wasn't right. Was I reborn, only to end up being blacklisted all over again? Standing alone on the crowded street as people hurried past him, Ethan felt more hopeless than ever before. For the first time since his rebirth, he began to question whether he could really change his destiny. Just then, his phone rang. It was his academic advisor, Professor Harris. "Ethan," the professor said warmly, "you're truly talented at writing songs. What are you doing these days?" Ethan let out a helpless sigh and briefly explained everything that had happened. After a moment of silence, Professor Harris spoke in a reassuring voice. "Don't panic. No one has that much power forever. I'll help you find a temporary job first. Think of it as something to get you through this difficult time." Ethan was deeply moved. He felt incredibly grateful to have a professor who genuinely cared about him. After ending the call, Professor Harris sent him an address and told him to go there immediately. Ethan followed the directions. But the moment he arrived, he froze in surprise. A large sign stood in front of the building. Ethan followed the address Professor Harris had sent him. The moment he arrived, he stopped in surprise. A large sign stood at the entrance. It read, "Starlight Music Bar." As soon as he stepped inside, Ethan realized the place was far bigger and far more luxurious than he had expected. The owner, Jason Walker, greeted him with a warm smile. Jason had once been one of Professor Harris's students as well. Jason looked at Ethan and said, "Son, I listened to your song, Too Far. It's genuinely well written. Can you perform live?" Ethan nodded without hesitation. Although he had studied composition rather than vocal performance, he was still a talented singer. He wasn't among the very best, but he was certainly much better than the average performer. After talking for a while, Jason hired him on the spot. Ethan would earn $200 per day, and any tips from customers would be split equally between him and the bar. That night, around 10 p.m., the music bar was already packed with customers. On stage, a young man in his 20s was performing a folk song. Ethan wasn't sure whether it was an original composition or a cover. He had never heard it before. The lyrics were quite good, but the melody lacked impact. As a result, the audience's reaction was only average. After the young man finished, a beautiful girl stepped onto the stage. It was immediately obvious that she was much more experienced. Her rhythm, stage presence, and confidence were all outstanding. As the music played, she sang and danced effortlessly, completely captivating the crowd. An elderly gentleman in the audience sent her 10 flower baskets as a gift. Each flower basket was worth $100, and the value counted toward her commission. It was clear that she was one of the bar's most popular performers. When the young woman's performance ended, it was finally Ethan's turn. Jason patted him on the shoulder and smiled. "Relax. Just imagine everyone down there is a bunch of dogs." Ethan paused for a second before laughing quietly. His boss really did have an unusual way of encouraging people. Taking a deep breath, he slowly walked onto the stage. He picked up his guitar and carefully tuned the strings. Then he smiled at the audience and spoke into the mic. Then he smiled at the audience and spoke into the microphone. "Good evening, everyone. My name is Ethan Hayes. Tonight, I'll be performing my original song, Too Far." The audience instantly fell silent. Whenever a new singer stepped onto the stage, everyone became curious about what they were about to hear. Ethan smiled at the audience and said, "Thank you, everyone. Tonight, I'll be performing my original song, Too Far." Ethan began singing Too Far while gently strumming his guitar. The moment his voice filled the room, everyone was stunned. Before long, several customers rose to their feet and applauded. A beautiful woman in a red dress stood up with tears glistening in her eyes. She shouted, "Handsome! That was incredible! One more song!" As soon as she spoke, the rest of the audience joined in. "One more! One more!" Everyone was asking Ethan to sing again. For a moment, Ethan didn't know what to do. He instinctively looked toward Jason, who was standing below the stage. Jason simply smiled and nodded, signaling him to continue. Ethan laughed to himself. "I was looking at you for help, and you're telling me to keep singing?" There was no way out now. After thinking for a few seconds, Ethan suddenly remembered another song. It was the perfect choice for a late-night music bar. Leaning toward the microphone, he smiled and said, "Thank you all so much for your support. Since you liked it, I'll perform another original song." Ethan took a deep breath and gently brushed the guitar strings. A soft, beautiful melody slowly spread through the room. As the intro continued, his warm voice gradually blended into the music. With just a few simple lines, the audience fell completely silent. No one had expected a fresh college graduate to write songs this beautiful. This one was gentle, soothing, and filled with quiet emotion, perfect for the atmosphere of a music bar. The woman in the red dress picked up her glass and took a sip. She had once been betrayed by her boyfriend as well. That was why she often came to bars alone, hoping to drink away the pain. But tonight, Ethan's song unexpectedly touched the deepest part of her heart. His voice carried the exhaustion of someone who had seen life's hardships. Yet it also held the calm wisdom of someone who truly understood them. The entire audience became lost in the music. They thought about the pressures of everyday life. The endless struggle to survive. The noise, the hypocrisy, and all the burdens they carried every day. Perhaps only in a lively, crowded bar like this could they find a few peaceful moments to escape reality. When the song ended, thunderous applause erupted throughout the room. Many people had tears in their eyes. The song had spoken the words they had kept buried deep inside for years. The beautiful woman in the red dress stood up once again. The moment Ethan noticed her, he grew nervous. Is she about to cause trouble? He wondered. After all, it was only his first day on the job. But instead of causing trouble, she raised her voice and shouted, "I'd like to send this handsome young man 100 flower baskets. Waiter, swipe my card." The entire bar exploded with excitement. According to the bar's rules, 100 flower baskets was the highest reward a customer could give a performer. Ethan's eyes widened with excitement. Each flower basket was worth $100. 100 flower baskets meant $10,000. Since the money was split evenly with the bar, Ethan would receive $5,000. Earning $5,000 in a single night felt almost unbelievable. So this is what people mean by impulse spending, Ethan thought with a smile. After the performance, Jason handed Ethan a thick bundle of cash. "Come here whenever you're free in the evenings," he said. Ethan gratefully nodded. Carrying the cash in his pocket, Ethan returned to his tiny rented room. Even now, it all felt like a dream. In his previous life, he had nearly worked himself to death doing exhausting labor. And after an entire month, he had earned only $5,000. Now, he had made the same amount in just one night. The following morning, Ethan rented a small recording studio and professionally re-recorded all 3 of his original songs. After returning home, he uploaded them to SoundCloud Music. 30 minutes later, only one person had listened. Ethan couldn't help feeling disappointed. "Looks like I'll have to find a way to promote these songs myself." Just then, his phone suddenly rang. An unfamiliar number appeared on the screen. When he answered, he learned it was the director of America's Strongest Voice calling him. Just then, Ethan received a phone call from an unknown number. It turned out to be the director of America's Strongest Voice. He wanted to invite Ethan to appear in an upcoming episode of the show. Ethan accepted the invitation immediately. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. This was exactly the opportunity he needed to promote his music. After discussing the details with the director, Ethan learned that he would be paid $2,000 for the recording. All he had to do was perform one song. That afternoon, Ethan sat down and wrote another brand new song. It was a powerful track created specifically for the competition. He even recorded the backing track in advance. This time, he was determined to make a huge impact. That evening, Ethan invited Mason out for dinner. The 2 friends stopped at a roadside barbecue stand, ordered some food, and started drinking. Ethan noticed that Mason had been unusually quiet. He barely spoke and just kept drinking. Sensing something was wrong, Ethan asked what had happened. Mason finally explained. At the gym where he worked, many female clients had become overly friendly with him. But Mason rejected their advances. As a result, one of the clients caused trouble, and the gym decided to fire him to smooth things over. Hearing the story, Ethan burst into laughter. "Mason, I never imagined you had the potential to become a male gigolo." Mason's face instantly turned bright red. Without saying a word, he awkwardly coughed and finished another bottle of beer. Seeing how embarrassed his friend was, Ethan stopped teasing him. Then he looked at Mason seriously and said, "Why don't you come work with me? Become my manager for now. Once I start making real money, we'll build our own company together." Mason nodded excitedly again and again. He had never imagined Ethan would take the entertainment industry so seriously. Or that he was already planning to start his own company. Ethan reached into his pocket and placed $2,000 on the table. Mason stared at the money in surprise. "Ethan, why are you giving me this? I don't want it." Ethan smiled and replied, "Do you really think I didn't know? The last time you uploaded that video for me, you secretly spent $1,000 promoting it. I'm not going to let my brother take a loss because of me." In the end, the 2 friends came to an agreement. After finishing a few more drinks, they headed to Starlight Music Bar for work. The woman in the red dress didn't show up that night. A few customers still sent Ethan flower baskets, but nowhere near as many as before. Even so, he wasn't disappointed. Making a few $1,000s in a single night was already more than enough for him. 2 days later, Ethan and Mason arrived at the recording studio for America's Strongest Voice. The moment the director saw Ethan, his eyes lit up. He enthusiastically shook Ethan's hand and said, "Ethan, your song Too Far is incredible. It perfectly captures the regrets and frustrations that so many adults carry in their hearts." Ethan scratched his head awkwardly and laughed. "But I just graduated from college. Since when did I become an older man like you?" The director couldn't help laughing. After exchanging a few more words, he led Ethan toward the recording stage. After chatting with the director for a while, Ethan and Mason followed a staff member to the dressing rooms. The production team had only 3 dressing rooms, and the first 2 were already occupied. So the makeup artist led Ethan into the 3rd room and began preparing him for the show. Mason stood nearby with a smile on his face. He had never seen Ethan wearing stage makeup before. In his memories, Ethan had always been delivering food or working exhausting construction jobs. Watching him prepare for a television performance felt almost unreal. The makeup artist had barely begun when the dressing room door suddenly swung open. A woman walked in with an arrogant expression and ordered, "You people, get out. We're using this room first." Ethan paused for a moment. Seriously? Since when do people have to fight over a makeup room, he thought. Even the makeup artist looked confused. He had never encountered something like this before and had no idea how to respond. When nobody moved, the woman immediately lost her temper. "What are you waiting for?" she snapped. "Hurry up and get out." Mason was about to step forward and argue with her. But Ethan quietly stopped him. "Let them go first. Honestly, I don't need much makeup anyway." With that, Ethan calmly walked out of the dressing room. Standing outside the door was a tall, incredibly handsome young man. He was casually looking down at his phone. The moment he noticed Ethan walking past, he let out a cold, contemptuous snort. Without saying another word, he entered the dressing room and slammed the door shut behind him. The makeup artist couldn't hide his frustration. "Why is he acting so arrogant?" he complained. "He's already 30 years old, yet he's still pretending to be the industry's newest heartthrob." Ethan and Mason weren't very familiar with the entertainment industry. Out of curiosity, they asked who the man was. The makeup artist answered, "That's Logan King. He's one of the biggest stars under Empire Entertainment." After that brief encounter, Ethan simply waited patiently for his turn. He showed no anger at all. Instead, he quietly prepared himself for the performance that could change his future forever. At exactly 9 p.m., the recording officially began. Below the stage sat 200 paid audience members. The host stepped onto the stage first and explained the rules. There were 8 crossover singers from different industries competing. They would draw lots to determine their opponents. After each head-to-head performance, 3 mentors would score them, and the 4 winners would advance to the next round. As the stage lights changed, the 3 mentors made their grand entrance one by one. They were the famous music critic Marcus Bell, the talented songwriter Daniel Brooks, and top talent manager Rachel Lane. Hearing this, Ethan and Mason exchanged surprised looks. "A manager can be a mentor too?" Ethan jokingly told Mason to work hard so that one day he could become a famous manager as well. Mason laughed. "My real dream is to open my own gym." Then came the draw. By pure coincidence, Ethan and Logan King ended up in the same group, meaning they would have to compete directly against each other. As the contestants went on stage one after another, it was finally Ethan and Logan's turn. The host glanced at the cue card, looked up, and loudly announced, "Our next contestant is the man known online as the Freeloader. Let's all look forward to his performance." The moment Mason heard that, his face darkened. "Ethan, this production team has gone too far. Forget the money, we're leaving right now." But Ethan simply smiled and didn't take it personally. He knew the production team only wanted to use the controversy around his name to attract attention. If he hadn't been labeled a freeloader, he probably wouldn't have even been invited onto the show. Besides, after being blacklisted by most of the entertainment industry, simply getting this opportunity was already a stroke of luck. Once he understood that, Ethan stopped overthinking it and calmly walked onto the stage. A spotlight instantly shone down on him. He gave a slight bow toward the audience. "Hello, respected judges. I'm the singer, Ethan Hayes." A few scattered claps came from the audience, while the three mentors watched him with serious expressions. The first to speak was Marcus Bell. "Contestant Ethan, what song will you be performing for us today?" Ethan calmly replied. "An original song that I wrote myself, Midnight Serenade." Marcus didn't ask any more questions and simply told him to begin. After all, a newcomer like Ethan wasn't expected to get much screen time. The stage lights slowly dimmed, and the song information appeared on the giant screen. Midnight Serenade. Singer, Ethan Hayes. Lyrics and composition, Ethan Hayes. The audience immediately started whispering among themselves. "So that's him. I know this guy. He's the so-called freeloader who was arguing online with Chloe a few days ago. Nowadays anyone can get on TV. What kind of song is Midnight Serenade? I've never even heard of it." Ignoring all the mockery and criticism coming from the crowd, Ethan simply took a deep breath and steadied himself. As the intro began to play, his voice slowly filled the hall. With just the first few lines, the entire audience fell silent. No one had expected the young man standing before them to open his mouth and deliver such a heartfelt English song. Even the three judges were visibly surprised. As the melody gradually built, it drew everyone deeper into the performance until they were completely absorbed. Backstage, even the director was stunned. He had only invited Ethan to fill a vacant spot as a controversial internet personality. He never imagined that Ethan could sing this well. His voice was rich, warm, and overflowing with emotion. The song began like a quiet confession before slowly rising into an emotional masterpiece. It gave the audience a strange sense of comfort, as though all the stress and sadness buried in their hearts were finally being washed away. As the performance reached its climax, Ethan continued singing with flawless control. The song exploded like a bomb, leaving everyone in the room speechless. Its quality was already on par with a hit single, and Ethan's performance was nearly perfect. The moment the song ended, thunderous applause erupted throughout the studio. Ethan bowed politely to thank the audience, but the applause continued for a long time. Smiling, the host returned to the stage to regain control. "Thank you, contestant Ethan Hayes, for that incredible performance. Now, let's welcome contestant Logan King to the stage." Ethan walked backstage, where Mason had already prepared a cup of warm honey lemon water for him. "This will help protect your voice," Mason said. For a moment, Ethan looked at him differently. He had never expected this big guy, who loved the gym so much, to have such a thoughtful and caring side. By then, Logan had already stepped onto the stage. He simply made a heart gesture toward the audience, and the crowd instantly burst into loud cheers. Even the three judges smiled and nodded repeatedly, clearly showing their admiration for him. As the music began, Logan grabbed the microphone and started singing confidently. He sang with full concentration, but something felt off. Both Ethan and Mason stared in disbelief. This guy really was something else. Not only was he singing off-key, but even the lyrics sounded strange and awkward. The audience froze in embarrassment, staring blankly at the stage. For a moment, they even forgot they were paid audience members. The director couldn't take it anymore. He immediately stopped the recording, rushed onto the stage, and shouted at the audience. "What's wrong with you people? Where are your expressions? Aren't you professionals? I'm giving you 5 minutes. Fix your reactions. If you still look like lifeless statues after that, don't expect to get paid today." The audience quickly panicked. Everyone fixing their clothes and practicing more enthusiastic expressions. 5 minutes later, the recording resumed. This time, they played their roles perfectly. They clapped when they were supposed to clap and cheered when they were supposed to cheer. After Logan finished his performance, the host called Ethan back onto the stage, and he took his place beside Logan. After Logan finished his performance, the host called Ethan back onto the stage. He stood beside Logan as they waited for the judges' comments. Marcus Bell was the first to speak. He frowned slightly as he looked at the two contestants. Deep down, he couldn't help thinking that the entertainment industry was truly full of politics. Still, he knew the performances would be heavily edited before airing, so he wasn't too concerned about the obvious difference in quality. After clearing his throat, Marcus said, "Both contestants gave performances that make this a difficult decision. However, I'm leaning more toward Logan. His singing and emotional expression were both excellent, so my vote goes to Logan." Logan immediately lowered his head and politely thanked him, putting on the image of a humble and respectful artist. The second vote came from Daniel Brooks. After watching both performances, he also voted for Logan. "I simply prefer Logan's voice," he said. Ethan stood calmly on the stage. He had already expected this outcome. The moment the director asked him to sign the contract, it was clear that he had only been invited for a single episode. In other words, he was never meant to advance in the competition. The final vote belonged to Rachel Lane. After seeing that the first two judges had already voted for Logan, she felt there was no need to make the result look too one-sided. So she cast her vote for Ethan instead. Either way, it wouldn't change the final outcome. Just then, Logan's manager suddenly walked onto the stage. He walked straight to the judges, pointed at Rachel, and shouted, "You have to vote for Logan. He needs a clean 3-0 victory." The director was stunned. He immediately stopped the recording and tried to reason with the manager. "This is important for the show. A unanimous victory will look fake." But the manager refused to listen. He arrogantly replied, "Logan appearing on your show is already doing you a huge favor. And you couldn't even arrange a separate dressing room for him." The director's face turned red with anger, but he forced himself to stay calm and continued trying to explain. Ethan quietly glanced at Logan and quickly realized that the young idol had no intention of stopping his manager. Instead, he stood there pretending as if none of this had anything to do with him. More than 200 people watched in silence as the director and the manager argued in the middle of the stage. In the end, the director had no other choice. He looked helplessly at Ethan. Ethan immediately understood what he meant. With a faint smile, he said, "Director, it's okay. I don't mind. A 3-0 result is fine." In truth, Ethan had already accepted his defeat. Since he was going to lose anyway, he decided to step back gracefully and leave a good impression on the director. Perhaps they would have another chance to work together in the future. The final segment was re-recorded, and the show was finally completed. After filming ended, the director invited Ethan to his office and handed him $2,000. He smiled and said, "Ethan, you can really sing. I have another variety show coming up. Would you like to join it?" Hearing those words, Ethan nodded repeatedly. Right now, what he needed most was opportunity. Now that someone was willing to support him, he had no intention of letting it slip away. "Thank you, director, for giving me this chance. I'd be happy to participate and give it my best." The director nodded with satisfaction. He explained that the new show would take a few more days to prepare and told Ethan to head home for now. He promised to contact him soon. On the way back, Mason was overjoyed. He had never imagined that singing just one song could earn $2,000. Ethan simply smiled without saying a word. After all, Midnight Serenade had the potential to become a massive hit. In his opinion, earning only $2,000 for it was actually quite little. After returning to his rented apartment, Ethan lay down on the sofa and casually scrolled through his phone. Soon, he noticed that Chloe was trending online once again. She had just announced that she was filming a new television drama called The Little Princess of the Palace. It was a high-budget production and one of the studio's biggest projects, attracting enormous attention even before its release. Seeing Chloe trending again, Ethan fell into deep thought. In his previous life, Chloe had never been cast in The Little Princess of the Palace. Had his rebirth changed the future? Ethan shook his head, deciding not to dwell on it any longer. No matter what changes happen from now on, I'll deal with them one step at a time, he thought. His priority now wasn't Chloe anymore. What mattered most was rebuilding his own career and proving himself to the world. After setting his phone aside, Ethan began planning his next move. He knew that one successful performance alone wasn't enough to establish himself in the entertainment industry. If he wanted to become a true superstar, he needed more original hit songs and more opportunities to perform. At the same time, Chloe's popularity continued to soar online. Countless fans congratulated her on landing the lead role in such a high-budget television drama. No one realized that, somewhere else in the city, Ethan had quietly begun walking down a completely different path, one that would eventually shake the entire entertainment industry. The very next evening, Ethan and Mason returned to the Starlight Music Bar, just as they always did. But tonight was different. The place was packed. Even before 9 p.m., every single seat had already been taken. The two of them waited backstage for a while, and soon it was Ethan's turn to perform. Confidently, Ethan walked onto the stage. He first sang Too Far, followed by Not That Simple. Just as he was about to finish work and leave, the mysterious girl in the red dress, the same one from his very first night at the bar, appeared once again. She excitedly shouted toward the stage. "That was amazing! One more song!" As Ethan was about to leave the stage, the girl in the red dress suddenly stood up again. She smiled brightly and shouted, "One more song!" The rest of the audience quickly joined in. "One more song! One more song!" Jason, the bar owner, laughed helplessly. Since everyone was asking for an encore, Ethan had no choice but to stay on stage. He picked up the microphone once again and smiled. "Then I'll sing one last song for everyone." As soon as the gentle melody began, the entire bar fell silent. After the performance ended, the audience burst into thunderous applause. Many people even sent flower baskets to the stage to show their appreciation. When Ethan finally stepped off the stage, Jason walked over with a smile. "Ethan, the lady in the red dress wants to invite you to dinner. Are you interested?" Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He could tell this woman came from an extraordinary background, and he didn't want to get too deeply involved with people like that. So he jokingly replied, "Senior, I sell my talent, not myself. Please help me think of an excuse to politely decline. I have something to do, so I'm heading out." Jason laughed. "Relax. This isn't that kind of place." Then he added, "By the way, that young lady is the daughter of the richest man in Los Angeles." Before Jason could say anything else, Ethan had already disappeared. On the way home, Mason asked with a regretful expression, "Ethan, I thought she was really beautiful. Why did you turn her down?" Ethan chuckled and answered seriously, "Brother, there's no such thing as a free meal. We need to keep our feet on the ground and build our own kingdom step by step." Mason nodded thoughtfully. The moment he remembered all those wealthy female clients at his gym, a chill ran down his spine. Just then, while they were chatting, a bright red convertible sports car suddenly sped toward them and stopped right in front of them. The girl in the red dress stepped out of the car and marched over angrily. "Ethan Hayes! You've got some nerve! How dare you reject my invitation? Do you even know who I am?" Her voice was sweet and pleasant, catching Ethan completely off guard. The problem was, he genuinely had no idea who she was. Judging by her confident attitude, she looked like the kind of rich young lady who always got her way. Thinking quickly, Ethan smiled and replied, "Of course I know who you are." He paused for a second before adding with a grin, "You're my sugar mommy." The moment those words left his mouth, the girl couldn't hold back her laughter. She giggled for a long time before looking at him with a playful smile. "If I'm your sugar mommy, shouldn't you treat me a little better?" Ethan let out a helpless sigh. "All right, so what exactly do you want?" After chatting for a while, he finally learned her identity. Her name was Scarlett Sullivan. She was the owner of CCAT Studios, one of the best recording studios in Los Angeles. After hearing Ethan sing, she wanted to invite him to record his songs there. The moment Ethan heard that, his eyes lit up. He had been worrying about where to find a professional recording studio. Now, one had practically come knocking on his door. Scarlett pulled a business card from her handbag and handed it to him. "Come by anytime. Our studio has some of the best recording equipment in the world." She smiled mischievously. "And the best part, it's completely free for you." The instant Ethan heard the word free, a huge smile appeared on his face. He reached out to take the card. But just as he did, Scarlett deliberately brushed her fingertip across his palm. A strange electric sensation shot through his entire body. Startled, Ethan immediately jumped backward. Seeing this, Mason hurriedly stepped in front of him. "Ethan! What happened?" Ethan's face instantly turned red. He stammered awkwardly. "And nothing, static electricity." Scarlett burst into laughter. A victorious smile spread across her face as she gave Ethan a playful wink. Then she turned around, got back into her sports car, and drove away. Watching the red convertible disappear into the distance, Ethan muttered to himself in embarrassment. "I've lived 2 lifetimes, and I still got teased by a girl." After returning to his rented apartment, Ethan received a call from the director. The director informed him that, 5 days later, he would be participating in a brand new variety show called Idol Training Camp. Ethan immediately recognized the name. It was one of the most popular talent competitions in America. A total of 101 contestants would compete, and anyone who finished in the top 5 would debut as a major star. The moment the call ended, Ethan got straight to work. He wrote 2 brand new original songs. This time, he had only one goal: to win the championship. The very next afternoon, Ethan registered the copyrights for both songs. After that, he headed to CCAT Studios to record the instrumental backing tracks. As soon as he entered, he noticed that many famous celebrities were recording there as well. When the staff at the front desk heard Ethan's name, they became extremely excited. They immediately escorted him to the studio's largest recording room and even prepared tea and snacks for him. The warm welcome left Ethan feeling a little embarrassed. The studio truly lived up to its reputation. The recording equipment was among the best in the world, and every instrument was top class. As a result, the recording session went incredibly smoothly. Everything was completed in just 2 hours. When Ethan finished and walked out, the staff didn't charge him a single cent. Scarlett had really kept her promise. There was only one small disappointment. Throughout the entire recording session, Ethan never got to see Scarlett. For some reason, that left him feeling slightly disappointed. About half an hour after Ethan left, Scarlett returned to CCAT Studios. The staff immediately informed her that Ethan had just finished recording there. She frowned slightly before giving a firm order. "From now on, whenever Ethan comes here, call me immediately." 4 days later, filming for Idol Training Camp officially began. Ethan and Mason arrived at the filming location together. The scene was spectacular. Luxury sports cars lined the entrance, famous celebrities were everywhere, and contestants from all over the country gathered with dreams of becoming the next superstar. Standing at the entrance, Ethan took a deep breath. He knew this competition would become the first major turning point in his new life. There were 101 contestants, and each participant had to perform an act. Singing, dancing, and rapping were all allowed. 3 mentors would evaluate every performance and assign one of 5 grades: A, B, C, D, or F. An F grade meant immediate elimination. In the very first episode, 71 contestants would be sent home, leaving only 30 to advance to the next round. Ethan looked down at his contestant badge. His number was 101. He was the very last contestant to perform. With a helpless smile, he thought, "Looks like I'm going to be waiting for a long time." Once all 1,000 audience members had taken their seats, the director gave the signal. The recording officially began. As energetic music echoed through the venue, the 3 mentors entered one after another. The first mentor was Shawn Rivers, a world-famous pop superstar. He was a legendary singer-songwriter whose original songs had all become massive hits. The second mentor was Carter Young, widely known as the Wizard of the music industry. He had also debuted through a talent competition years ago and eventually rose to the top, becoming one of the biggest stars in the industry. The third mentor was the rising pop diva, Lily Morgan. The moment she stepped onto the stage, the audience erupted with deafening cheers. Her elegant appearance and confident presence instantly captured everyone's attention. After the three mentors took their seats, the competition officially began. The first act was a 6-member boy group. They poured every ounce of energy into their performance, singing and dancing with everything they had.